Captain Lee Doyen pressed his face against the cold concrete wall of the underground bunker. Through the small window, he watched the empty streets of Seoul stretch out below him. 3 months ago, those streets had been filled with millions of people. Cars had moved in endless streams. Children had played in parks while their parents hurried to work. Now, there was nothing. Every few minutes, a group of tall blue creatures walked down the main road. They carried strange weapons that hummed with energy. Their forearms moved in careful patterns as they searched the abandoned buildings. These were the Valkyrie, the aliens who had come to conquer Earth. Doyen pulled back from the window and turned to face the other people in the bunker. There were 12 of them hiding in this old subway maintenance room. All of them were part of Earth's secret resistance. All of them were waiting. Still nothing out there, Doyen said quietly. Just the usual patrol. Commander Jeho nodded from where he sat at a small table covered with papers and maps. The older man had been planning Earth's defense for months, before the aliens even arrived. His gray hair was messy, and his clothes were dirty, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Good, Jeho said. The longer they stay confused, the better. Dr. Hannah Park looked up from her notebook. She had been studying the aliens since the first day they landed. Her small hands were covered in ink stains from drawing pictures of the Valkyrie and writing down everything she observed about them. They sent another message to their home world yesterday, she said. I heard it on the radio scanner. They sound worried. Ho smiled for the first time in weeks. They should be worried. The story of how Earth had prepared for this invasion was not. Like anything from the old movies, there had been no great battles in space, no heroic last stands in important cities, no desperate speeches from world leaders. Instead, humanity had simply disappeared. It had taken years of careful planning, secret meetings in hidden rooms, quiet conversations between government leaders who trusted each other completely. The plan was simple, but required perfect timing and total cooperation from every person on. Where Thokari ships first appeared in the sky above major cities, they had followed the same pattern they used on dozens of other worlds. They broadcast a message in many languages, demanding surrender. They gave humanity 24 hours to accept Valkyrie, rule or face total destruction. But humanity had been listening to Valkyrie communications for over a year. They knew exactly what the aliens would do and how they would do it. Most importantly, they knew what the aliens expected would happen next. The Valkyrie expected either immediate surrender or desperate resistance. Every world they had conquered before had chosen one of these two options. Surrender meant becoming slaves who worked in Valkyrie factories and mines. Resistance meant watching their cities burn until the survivors begged for mercy. Humanity chose a third option that the Valkyrie had never seen before. They vanished in the space of 6 hours. 8 billion people simply melted away from every city, town, and village on Earth. They left behind empty houses with meals still on tables. They abandoned cars in perfect parking spots. They walked away from jobs and schools and shopping centers, leaving everything exactly as it was, but taking themselves somewhere the aliens could not find them. The Valkyrie landed their troops expecting to find either cheering crowds ready to welcome their new masters or angry mobs throwing rocks at their ships. Instead, they found streets full of nothing but wind and silence. Kim Min-soo had been one of the people who made this possible. He was a language expert who had spent 2 years learning to understand Valkyrie communications. Now he sat in the corner of the bunker, listening to alien radio chatter through a small device covered in blinking lights. They are getting more frustrated every day, he said, adjusting the controls on his radio. The different types of aliens are starting to blame each other for what they call the Earth problem. What kinds of things are they saying? Asked Yuna. Choi. She was an engineer who had helped design many of the hidden shelters where humans were now living. Min-soo listened for a moment before translating. The blue ones think the gray ones made a mistake in the invasion plan. The gray ones say the green ones are not searching hard enough for humans. The green ones want to just destroy everything and leave. This was exactly what Commander Jeho had hoped would happen. The Valkyrie Empire was not really one species working together. It was 5 different alien races who had formed an alliance to conquer other worlds. The alliance was strong when they were winning easy victories, but it became weak when they faced problems they did not. Understand, Dr. Park had studied the history of Velkari conquests by reading their own records. Every planet they attacked had fallen within days or weeks. Their military was designed for quick victories, followed by setting up governments that would obey Velkari orders. They had never had to deal with an entire population that refused to be conquered but also refused to fight. The problem is that they are not prepared for a long occupation, she explained to the group. They brought enough supplies for a few months of fighting, followed by using Earth's own resources. But Earth's resources are useless to them if they cannot find any humans to force into working. Through the hidden communication networks that connected resistance groups around the world, reports came in daily about Velkari confusion and growing desperation. In North America, alien patrols were searching the same empty cities over and over, as if expecting humans to suddenly reappear. In Europe, Velkari ships were wasting fuel flying back and forth between abandoned towns. In Asia, alien commanders were sending increasingly angry messages to their superiors, demanding new orders for a situation their training had never covered. But the most important information came from space. Hidden sensors that humans had placed throughout the solar system showed that more and more Velkari ships were arriving in Earth orbit. What should have been a simple conquest, requiring only a small force, was becoming a massive operation that was draining resources from Velkari military campaigns on other worlds. "How long can we stay hidden?" asked Sahi Kim, a young pilot who would be important to later plans. Commander Jiho spread out a map, showing the locations of underground cities and hidden bases that had been built in secret over the past 5 years. The map showed hundreds of red dots scattered across every continent. Each dot represented thousands of people living in places the aliens could not detect. "We can stay hidden for years if we need to," Jiho said. "We will not need to wait that long." "Why not?" asked Duhane. Jiho pointed to reports from space monitoring stations. "Because they are already destroying themselves." Spend on Earth trying to solve the human problem is a day they are not conquering other worlds or defending the territory they already control. Their empire is starting to crack under the pressure. The plan was working better than anyone had dared to hope. By refusing to surrender or fight, humanity had turned the Velkari's greatest strength against them. Their ability to quickly conquer worlds had become a weakness. When faced with a world that would not stay conquered, but the plan was only beginning. Hidden in bases like this one around the world, humans were not just waiting, they were preparing for the next phase of their response to the invasion. Soon, Velkari would learn that humanity's silence had not been the sound of defeat, it had been the sound of getting ready. 6 months had passed since the Velkari invasion began, and Engineer Yuna Choi stood in the center of the most amazing sight she had ever seen. Around her stretched a vast underground city that had not existed a year ago. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. Streets lined with workshops and factories extended in every direction until they disappeared into the distance. This was New Busan, all built inside a massive cave system beneath the Korean peninsula. But calling it a cave was like calling the ocean a puddle. The space was so enormous that entire city blocks fit inside it with room to spare. Thousands of people moved through the streets, all working on the greatest construction project in human history. Production report, Yuna called out to her assistant, Junho Lee, as they walked past a row of machines that hummed with activity. All factories are running at full capacity, Junho said, reading from his tablet. We are producing 5 times more than our original targets. The new 3D printing systems are working better than we hoped. Yuna nodded with satisfaction. When humanity had decided to disappear from the surface world, they had not just hidden themselves. They had moved entire factories, piece by piece, into underground locations. Every machine, every computer, every tool that could be useful had been secretly relocated before the aliens arrived, but they had done much more than just move old equipment. In the 6 months since the invasion, human engineers had been working day and night to build new types of factories that could produce things faster and better than ever before. The most impressive part was not the size of New Busan, but how quickly it had been built. Using construction robots and advanced building techniques, humans had carved this city out of solid rock in less than 4 months. Similar underground cities now existed on every continent, all connected by secret tunnels and communication lines. Show me the latest reports from the other cities, Yuna said as they entered her office, which was built into the wall of the cave like a bird's nest. JUNHO activated a large screen that showed a map of the world. Dozens of green dots appeared, each one representing a hidden city like New Busan. Red numbers appeared next to each dot, showing production levels and population. Amazing, Yuna whispered. We now have more manufacturing capacity underground than we ever had on the surface. This was the secret that the Valkyrie could not understand. They thought humans had simply hidden themselves away like frightened animals. They had no idea that humanity had used the time before the invasion to build a completely new type of civilization. One designed specifically for the war that was coming. Dr. Temen's son worked in a different part of New Busan in laboratories that were filled with alien technology, as head of the Rapid Development Division. His job was to study every piece of Valkyrie equipment that humans had been able to capture and make it better. The alien weapons are impressive, he explained to a group of scientists gathered around a table covered with strange devices. But they are built using technology that has not changed in hundreds of years. The Valkyrie became so powerful that they stopped trying to improve. Taman picked up a Valkyrie energy weapon and pointed to its internal components. This weapon is exactly the same as weapons they were using 50 years ago. Same power source, same firing mechanism, same targeting system. They see no reason to change something that works, but we do see reasons to change, said Dr. Minji Park, one of Taman's top researchers, because we are not trying to keep using the same weapons. We're trying to build weapons that are better than theirs. The results of their work filled several rooms in the laboratory complex, human versions of Valkyrie weapons that were smaller, more powerful, and much more accurate. Armor that was lighter but stronger than anything the aliens used. Most importantly, completely new types of technology that the Valkyrie had never imagined. Show them the phase technology, Taman said to his assistant. The assistant activated a device that looked like a simple metal box. Suddenly, the box became transparent as if it was made of glass. Then it disappeared completely, though they could still hear it humming softly. We call it phase shifting, Taman explained. The object is still there, but it exists slightly outside normal space. Valkyrie sensors cannot detect it, and their weapons cannot hit it. The applications were obvious and terrifying. Vehicles that could become invisible. Weapons that could fire from another dimension. Soldiers who could walk through walls. In 6 months, humanity had developed technology that was centuries ahead of what the Valkyrie possessed. Pilot Sahi Kim spent her days in a different part of the underground city. In training facilities that looked like something from a science fiction movie. She was learning to fly spacecraft that did not yet exist. Using virtual reality systems that could simulate any battle situation. Enemy fighters approaching from the left, announced the computer voice as Sahi's training simulation began. Around her, the virtual cockpit filled with displays showing incoming Valkyrie ships. But Sahi was not flying a copy of a Valkyrie fighter. Her virtual ship was something completely new, designed by human engineers who had studied every weakness in alien spacecraft design. It was faster than anything the Valkyrie had ever built. It could turn in directions that alien ships could not follow. Most importantly, It was armed with weapons that could punch through Valkyrie armor like paper. Simulation complete. The computer announced all enemy targets destroyed. Time elapsed, 43 seconds. Sahi removed her virtual reality helmet and smiled. 6 months ago, she had been a civilian who had never flown anything more complex than a small airplane. Now she was training to pilot the most advanced fighter spacecraft ever built. Her hundreds of other pilots were going through the same training, preparing for battles that would determine the future of humanity. But the most important work was being done by people like Nari Kong, who operated in the most dangerous part of the human resistance effort. While others built weapons and ships, Nares's job was to gather intelligence about the enemy. She stood in a room filled with communication equipment, listening to Valkyrie radio transmissions that were intercepted by hidden sensors around the world. But she was not just listening. She was participating in alien communications, pretending to be a Valkyrie officer using advanced voice modification technology. "Supply Convoy 7 requesting permission to return to base," she said into her microphone. "It's speaking perfect Valkyrie language with the correct accent for a junior officer. Permission granted," came the reply from an actual Valkyrie commander. "Report fuel status and cargo manifest." Nari provided false information that would send the alien convoy to the wrong location, where human forces would be waiting to capture their supplies. This type of operation happened dozens of times every day as human agents infiltrated Valkyrie communication networks and fed them false information. The intelligence gathered through these operations painted a clear picture of an alien military force that was falling apart. The different species within the Valkyrie alliance were arguing constantly. Supply lines were breaking down. Morale was terrible. They expected to be going home by now, Nari explained to her supervisor. Every day they stay on Earth makes them more frustrated and desperate. Some of the commanders are talking about abandoning the invasion and retreating to defend their other territories. But the most important intelligence came from communications specialist Hyunwoo Park, who had achieved something that no one thought was possible. He had broken the Valkyrie quantum communication system, giving humanity access to all alien military communications across their entire empire. "We can hear everything they say to each other," Hyunwoo explained to a meeting of resistance leaders. "Every order, every supply request, every complaint from every Valkyrie base in the galaxy. We know where their ships are, how many troops they have, and what they are planning to do next." The information revealed the true scale of what humanity was facing. The Valkyrie Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and had military forces spread across multiple star systems. But it also revealed the Empire's greatest weakness: they're overextended, Commander Jiho said as he studied the intelligence reports. They have been conquering worlds so fast that they do not have enough troops to properly control all their territory. The Earth invasion has forced them to bring in reinforcements from other systems, leaving those areas vulnerable. This was exactly what humanity's leaders had hoped to discover. The Valkyrie were not an unstoppable force. They were a military stretched too thin, held together by momentum and the fear of their enemies. If that momentum could be broken, the entire empire might collapse. As the 6-month mark passed, the hidden cities of humanity were ready for the next phase of their plan. They had built weapons and ships that surpassed alien technology. Had trained armies of soldiers and pilots. They had infiltrated enemy communications and learned all their secrets. Most importantly, they had learned that the Valkyrie Empire was not prepared for the type of war that humanity was about to bring. To them soon, the aliens would discover that human silence had not been surrendered. It had been preparation. Admiral Seojin Lim stood on the bridge of the starship, Shin's revenge, and watched the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. Through the massive viewing window, hundreds of human spacecraft moved in perfect formation through the darkness of space. Each ship was sleek and deadly, built with technology that the Valkyrie had never imagined possible. 1 year had passed since the alien invasion began. For 12 months, the Valkyrie had searched empty cities and wondered where all the humans had gone. Today they were about to find out. "All ships report ready for operation," announced Communications Officer Woojin Park from his station. "Phase drives are charged and operational. Weapon systems are at full power. Seogen nodded and activated the fleet communication system. His voice would now reach every human ship scattered throughout the galaxy, not just those around Earth. "This is Admiral Lim to all units," he said calmly. "Today we begin Operation Homecoming. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you invade a world full of humans. Ships prepare for simultaneous strike. Target coordinates are locked. Execute in 10 seconds. The countdown began. Around Earth, 50 human warships prepared to disappear from normal space. But they were not the only ones. In 17 different star systems across Valkyrie territory, other human fleets were preparing for the exact same attack at the exact same moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Human ships vanished in the Valkyrie command center on Nis. Earth Commander Vec was studying reports from his frustrated troops when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. His forearms moved quickly across his control panels, trying to understand what was happening. "Report," he ordered. His communications officer, "Sir, we are receiving emergency signals from across the Empire. Our bases in the Corland system are under attack. The supply depot at Nexus 7 has gone silent. Our communication array in the Telman sector is not responding." Vec felt something he had not experienced in his 200 years of military service. Fear. "How many locations are under attack?" 17 star systems, sir. All attacked simultaneously. We estimate over 300 separate strikes happening at the same time. This was impossible. The primitive humans of Earth did not have the technology for interstellar travel, let alone the ability to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Yet the evidence was flooding in from across the Empire. But the attacks were unlike anything. In Valkyrie military experience, the humans were not trying to conquer territory or destroy planets. Instead, they were targeting very specific locations with surgical precision. Power stations that provided energy to entire sectors went dark in minutes. Communication arrays that connected distant parts of the Empire fell silent. Supply depots that stored food and equipment for dozens of worlds simply vanished, as if they had never existed. Most confusing of all, the attacks seemed to come from nowhere. Valkyrie sensors detected no approaching ships, no energy signatures, nothing that indicated an enemy presence. Human vessels simply appeared inside Valkyrie defensive perimeters, delivered devastating attacks, and disappeared before return fire could be coordinated on Earth. Colonel Mingio led the ground assault that began exactly 60 minutes after the space attack started. She crouched behind a ruined building in what had once been downtown Seoul, watching a Valkyrie patrol move down the empty street below. "All units, this is ground command," she whispered into her communication device. "The aliens still have no idea we are here. Begin Operation Clean Sweep." What happened next would have been impossible to believe if it had not been recorded by dozens of cameras. Human soldiers seemed to materialize out of thin air all around the Valkyrie patrol. They wore armor that made them nearly invisible and carried weapons that fired bolts of energy brighter than lightning. The alien patrol never had a chance to fight back. In less than 30 seconds, all 8 Valkyrie soldiers were unconscious, stunned by weapons that were designed to disable rather than kill. Human soldiers quickly gathered the aliens and their equipment, then vanished back into the shadows as if they had never been there. Similar operations were happening simultaneously in every major city on Earth. Valkyrie forces that had spent a year searching for humans suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies who seemed to appear from nothing, strike with overwhelming force, and disappear before help could arrive. But the most shocking part was not the speed or effectiveness of the attacks. It was what happened to the captured Valkyrie soldiers. Dr. Junho Lee worked in a medical facility that had been built specifically to treat alien prisoners. As the first stunned Valkyrie were brought in, he began the process that would change everything the aliens believed about warfare. "Check their vital signs," he told his medical team. "Make sure the stun weapons did not cause any permanent damage. Set up beds with proper nutrition and medical care." The captured Valkyrie soldier slowly regained consciousness and found himself in a clean, bright room. He was lying on a comfortable bed, and his wounds from the capture had been carefully bandaged. A human in a white coat was checking monitors that showed his heart rate and other vital signs. "Where am I?" the alien asked in his own language. "You are in a medical facility," Dr. Lee replied in perfect Valkyrie. "You were stunned during the capture, but you are not seriously hurt. We are going to take care of you." The Valkyrie soldier stared at the human in complete confusion. In the Valkyrie military, captured enemies were either executed immediately or enslaved. The idea of providing medical care to a prisoner was so foreign that he could not understand what was happening. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Because you are injured, and we are doctors," Lee said simply. "That is what doctors do." This scene was repeated in dozens of medical facilities around Earth, as more Valkyrie prisoners were captured. Each alien soldier expected to be tortured or killed. Instead, they received better medical care than they had ever gotten from their own military. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Within hours, Valkyrie communications networks were filled with confused reports from soldiers, who could not understand why their human captors were treating them with kindness instead of cruelty in space. The human attacks continued with precision that seemed impossible. Space engineer Woojin Park commanded one of the human strike teams that had appeared deep inside Valkyrie territory. His ship had used phase drive technology to materialize inside a heavily defended Valkyrie supply base. "All defensive systems neutralized," reported his weapons officer. "No casualties among the alien crew. The base is secure." This was the pattern throughout all the human attacks. Overwhelming force applied with perfect precision to disable rather than destroy. Valkyrie military installations were captured intact. Alien soldiers were stunned rather than killed. Equipment was taken, but alien personnel were left unharmed. Most importantly, the humans were broadcasting messages on all Valkyrie communication frequencies. The same message was repeated in every alien language throughout the Empire. "This is the human military forces," the message said. "We did not start this war, but we are going to end it. We are not here to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. We are here to stop you from conquering and enslaving others. Surrender now, and you will be treated with the same mercy we have shown your captured soldiers." The message was accompanied by video recordings of Valkyrie prisoners receiving medical care, eating good food, and being treated with respect by their human captors. For soldiers who had been taught that humans were primitive savages, the evidence was impossible to ignore. But the most terrifying revelation came when Valkyrie commanders tried to analyze the human attacks. Dr. Yoonji Kong, head of Human Psychological Warfare Division, had designed the campaign to send a very specific message to the alien leadership. The humans had demonstrated technology that was decades ahead of anything the Valkyrie possessed. Ships that could appear and disappear at will. Weapons that could disable without killing. Sensors that could predict Valkyrie movements before they were made. Most frightening of all, the humans had shown that they knew everything about Valkyrie. Military operations, they knew where every base was located, how many troops were stationed there, and what supplies were stored in each facility. The level of intelligence required for such coordinated attacks suggested that human agents had infiltrated every level of Valkyrie command. "They are not fighting like any enemy we have ever faced," admitted Valkyrie General Zaxxon during an emergency meeting of alien commanders. "They fight like they know everything about us, while we know nothing about them." Within 72 hours of the first human attacks, Valkyrie forces throughout the Empire were in complete chaos. Not because they had been defeated in battle, but because they could not understand the enemy they were facing. Human forces continued to appear without warning, capture strategic locations, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. They never stayed to hold territory. They never demanded surrender. They simply demonstrated that they could strike anywhere, anytime. With complete impunity, the psychological warfare was working perfectly. Valkyrie troops, who had once been confident conquerors, now lived in constant fear of an enemy that could attack from nowhere, vanish into nothing. But the humans were just getting started. Intelligence Chief Hyjin Moon sat in the command center beneath Seoul, watching the Valkyrie Empire destroy itself. On the massive screens around her, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Each report told the same story. The alien empire was falling apart from the inside. 18 months had passed since the Valkyrie first arrived at Earth. For 6 months, They had searched empty cities. For 12 months, they had endured hit-and-run attacks that left them confused and afraid. Now, their 1,000-year-old empire was breaking into pieces. "Show me the latest reports from the Valkyrie home systems," Aijin said to her assistant, Minho Yoon. The main screen filled with intercepted alien communications. Different Valkyrie species were sending angry messages to each other, each one blaming the others for the disaster that Earth had become. "The blue-skinned Valkyrie are saying the gray ones planned the invasion poorly," Minho translated. "The gray ones claim the green Valkyrie are cowards who will not fight properly. The green ones want to abandon Earth completely and use their military to attack the brown Valkyrie homeworlds." Hajin smiled grimly. This was exactly what human strategists had predicted would happen. The Valkyrie Empire was not really one unified government. It was an alliance of 5 different alien species who worked together only when they were winning. "Easy victories? Any word from their military commanders?" she asked. "Yes, 3 different Valkyrie generals have declared themselves the supreme commander of Imperial forces. 2 of them are fighting each other in the Corlin system. The 3rd has retreated to defend his own home planet and is refusing to send troops anywhere else." The genius of humanity's strategy was becoming clear. It never needed to defeat the entire Valkyrie military in direct battle. They only needed to prove that the Empire could be hurt, and the aliens' own internal conflicts would do the rest. But humans were not content to simply watch the Empire collapse. They were actively helping it fall apart. General Ki-Wan Jung commanded a fleet of human ships that were not attacking Valkyrie military bases. Instead, they were visiting worlds that had been conquered by the Empire years or decades earlier. Their mission was not conquest, but liberation. Approaching the Helios system, reported his navigator, Ensign Chaewon Kim. 3 inhabited planets, all under Valkyrie occupation for the past 40 years. "Any sign of Imperial fleet units?" Ki-Wan asked. "Negative, sir. Our intelligence reports were correct. The Valkyrie pulled most of their forces out of this system to reinforce their positions around Earth." This was happening throughout Valkyrie territory. The massive resources needed to maintain the occupation of Earth had forced the aliens to weaken their control over dozens of other worlds. Human forces were taking advantage of these gaps to free enslaved populations. "Begin liberation protocol," Ki-Wan ordered. The human ships did not attack the Valkyrie garrison directly. Instead, they broadcast a message to the enslaved population of the planets below. "People of Helios, this is the Human Liberation Fleet. We are here to help you become free. The Valkyrie forces in your system have been isolated and cannot receive reinforcements. If you rise up against them now, we will provide support. You do not have to live as slaves anymore." The response was immediate. On all 3 planets, the local populations began attacking Valkyrie installations. 40 years of oppression exploded into revolution as the enslaved aliens realized that their oppressors were no longer invincible. When Valkyrie forces tried to crush the rebellions, they found human ships waiting for them. But the humans did not fight a traditional space battle. They used their phase drive technology to appear behind Valkyrie ships, disable their weapons, and disappear before return fire could be coordinated. Within 72 hours, the Helios system was free. The Valkyrie garrison surrendered rather than face complete destruction. But instead of being executed, the surrendering aliens were treated as prisoners of war and offered the choice to return to their home worlds. "Why are you letting us go?" asked the Valkyrie commander as he was released. "Because we are not trying to build our own empire," replied Captain Soman Park, who was in charge of prisoner processing. "We are trying to end the idea of empires entirely." This scene was repeated across dozens of star systems as human liberation fleets freed world after world from Valkyrie control. The freed populations quickly discovered that humans had no intention of replacing Valkyrie rule with human rule. Dead. The humans helped establish local governments and then left the systems to govern themselves. The psychological impact on the Valkyrie Empire was devastating. For 1,000 years, they had taught their people that conquest and slavery were the natural order of the galaxy. Now they were facing an enemy that conquered worlds only to give them freedom. Field medic Yaren Cha worked aboard one of the human hospital ships that followed the liberation fleets. Her job was to treat wounded from all sides of the fighting, including Velkhari soldiers who had been injured in the rebellions. "Patient in bed 7 is asking to speak with you," her assistant told her as she made her rounds. The patient was a young Velkhari soldier who had been badly hurt when his ship was disabled by human forces. His forearms were bandaged and his breathing was labored, but he was conscious and alert. "Why do you heal us?" he asked in broken human language. "We came to enslave your world. We would have killed or enslaved all humans if we had one. Why do you save my life?" Yaren sat down beside his bed and considered her answer carefully. "Because that is who we are," she said finally. "We do not become monsters just because we are fighting monsters. We stay human." The Velkhari soldier stared at her for a long moment. "I do not understand humans," he said. "You will," Yaren replied. "That is why we are going to win." Reports like this were flowing back to Velkhari command centers throughout the Empire. Soldiers who had been taught that all other species were inferior were encountering humans who demonstrated moral superiority in every interaction. The effect on Velkhari morale was catastrophic. Tech specialist Dong Yunyu was working on humanity's secret weapon against Velkhari technology. While the aliens struggled to understand human phase drives and advanced weapons, human engineers were constantly developing new innovations that made their previous equipment obsolete. The latest battle reports show that Velkhari forces are still trying to counter our weapons from 6 months ago, he explained to a meeting of defense contractors. "They have no idea that we stopped using those designs 4 months ago and have moved on to completely new technology. This was humanity's greatest advantage in the war. Velkhari technology had remained essentially unchanged for centuries, because their empire was so successful that they saw no need to innovate. Human technology evolved every few weeks as engineers incorporated lessons learned from each battle. The result was that Velkhari forces never had time to adapt to human tactics before those tactics changed completely. They were always fighting the last battle while humans were already preparing for the next one. The turning point came when humanity made direct contact with civilian populations on the Velkhari home worlds. Using captured communication equipment, human diplomats broadcast messages directly to alien citizens. "People of the Velkhari worlds," the message began. "We are the humans of Earth. Your government invaded our world and tried to enslave our people. We defended ourselves and discovered that your empire is built on the suffering of countless other species. We offer you a choice. Help us end this war peacefully, or watch your empire collapse in chaos and violence." The message was accompanied by video evidence of Velkhari war crimes on dozens of conquered worlds. Images of enslaved populations, destroyed cities, and mass executions that the imperial government had hidden from their own people for centuries. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On world after world, Velkhari civilians began protesting against their own government. They demanded an end to the war with Earth and the establishment of a new government that would not be built on conquest and slavery. Within weeks, the protests had become open rebellion. Velkhari citizens were fighting their own military in the streets of their capital cities. The empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds was being destroyed by its own people. The final blow came when the Velkhari Imperial Council sent a message to Earth asking for terms of surrender. But by then, there was no empire left to surrender. The alliance of 5 species had collapsed completely, with each group blaming the others for the disaster commander. Gyeho read the surrender offer to a gathering of human leaders in the underground command center. "They are offering to withdraw from Earth completely and pay tribute to humanity for 100 years, he said. "They want to return to the old system, where we pretend this never happened." "What should we tell them?" asked Admiral Sejin Lim Jiho. Smiled. "We tell them that the old system is dead. There will be no more empires in this galaxy. There will be no more conquered worlds or enslaved peoples. We're going to build something completely new." The Velkhari Empire was finished. Humanity's work was just beginning. President Subin Kim stood before the greatest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 worlds filled the massive meeting hall of the new Galactic Council station. Some were human, but most were aliens who had been freed from Velkhari rule. All of them were here to decide what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. 2 years had passed since the Valkyrie invasion of Earth began. The empire that had once controlled hundreds of worlds no longer existed. Placed dozens of independent systems had formed voluntary alliances based on cooperation rather than conquest. We face a choice that no galactic civilization has ever faced before, Subban said, as her words were translated into dozens of different languages. We can build a galaxy where strong species dominate weak ones, as has always been the case. Or, we can build something new where all species work together as equals. The response from the alien representatives was immediate and positive. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now sitting together discussing trade agreements. In cultural exchanges, the transformation had happened faster than anyone had thought possible. Ambassador Yemeno worked in a different part of the station, managing the complex process of restructuring galactic society. His office was filled with documents and agreements. That represented the new relationships being formed between worlds that had never cooperated before. The Corlin system wants to establish trade relations with the Telman worlds, his assistant Kyung-Min Lee reported. I won why wouldn't I love fire why cry why try sala should I fire so approved, Yemen said, signing the agreement. What about the territorial disputes in the Nexus sector? Resolved peacefully. All 3 species agreed to joint administration of the disputed planets. They are setting up a local council with equal representation for everyone. This was happening throughout the former Valkyrie territory. Worlds that had been forced to fight each other for the Empire's entertainment were now discovering that cooperation brought better results than conflict. The economic benefits alone were staggering. Economic advisor Chao Jung had the complex job of helping dozens of different species rebuild their economies without the Valkyrie system of tribute and forced labor. Her solution was simple, but revolutionary. Free trade between all systems, with technology and knowledge shared openly. The old imperial economy was based on taking resources from conquered worlds and giving nothing back, she explained to a meeting of planetary representatives. The new economy will be based on every world contributing what it does best and receiving what it needs most. The results were already visible. Worlds that had been strip-mined by the Valkyrie were now receiving advanced technology to restore their environments. Species that had been forced to work in Valkyrie factories were now building their own industries. Systems that had been isolated for centuries were now connected by trade routes and communication networks. But the most dramatic change was not economic or political. It was medical and psychological. Dr. Sang-Hoon Bae led teams of human doctors and therapists who were working throughout the former empire to help heal the trauma of centuries of oppression. His medical ships visited world after world, providing not just physical healing, but emotional support for entire populations. The Valkyrie did not just conquer worlds, he explained to his medical staff. They broke the spirits of entire species. They convinced them that being conquered was natural, and that resistance was hopeless. Our job is to help them remember that they are free. The work was difficult but rewarding. On world after world, alien populations were learning to govern themselves, make their own decisions, and build their own futures. Species that had forgotten their own cultures were rediscovering ancient traditions. Languages that had been forbidden, under Valkyrie rule, were being spoken again. Most importantly, the concept of individual rights was spreading throughout galactic civilization. The idea that every person, regardless of species, had the right to live free from oppression, was revolutionary to societies that had known only imperial rule. Anthropologist Jian Xin studied how human political concepts were being adapted by different alien cultures. Her research showed that democracy, personal freedom, equal justice were not just human ideas, they were universal concepts that every intelligent species could understand and embrace. The fascinating thing is how quickly different species are adopting these ideas, she told a conference of social scientists. Even species that evolve very differently from humans seem to understand that cooperation works better than domination. The evidence was everywhere. Former Velkhari slave worlds were establishing elected governments. Species that had been enemies for generations were forming mutual defense pacts. Most remarkably, former Velkhari soldiers were working alongside the species they had once oppressed to rebuild damaged worlds. The transformation of the former Velkhari leadership was perhaps the most surprising development. Instead of being executed or imprisoned, convicted war criminals were sentenced to community service, specifically helping to rebuild the worlds they had once oppressed. "I do not understand why you make us do this," said former Velkhari general Thax as he helped construct a new hospital on a world his forces had once devastated. "Because punishment that only causes more suffering does not help anyone," replied Supervisor Giwan Park, who oversaw the rehabilitation program. "But punishment that helps repair the damage you caused, gives meaning to your suffering, and helps heal the people you hurt." The psychological impact of seeing their former oppressors working to undo the damage they had caused was transforming victims' relationships with justice and forgiveness. Many of the species that had suffered under Velkhari rule reported that watching their former enemies work to help them was more satisfying than any execution would have been. But the most significant change was cultural. Human concepts of individual dignity, democratic government, and peaceful conflict resolution were spreading through galactic civilization like seeds in fertile ground. "We are not trying to make other species become human," explained Cultural Exchange Director Sunwoo Kim. "We are helping them discover the best parts of their own nature that the Velkhari tried to suppress." The results were remarkable. Species that had been forced to abandon their own traditions were creating new art, music, and literature that combined their ancient heritage with modern ideas of freedom and cooperation. Worlds that had been industrial slave camps were becoming centers of learning and culture. Children of different species were growing up together on integrated worlds, learning each other's languages and customs. The first generation of truly galactic citizens was being born. People who thought of themselves not as members of individual species competing for resources, but as part of a larger community working together, as the Galactic Council prepared to formalize the new system of interstellar relations. Reports came in from deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors had detected signs of another major galactic power, one that made the former Velkhari Empire look small by comparison. The hegemony of worlds, Intelligence Director Minseo Choi reported to an emergency session of the Council. "Our best estimates suggest they control over 3,000 star systems and have been expanding for over 10,000 years." The news should have caused panic. Instead, it was met with calm determination. The galaxy had learned something important from the war with the Velkhari. The strongest civilization was not the one that could conquer others, but the one that could help others become stronger. If the hegemony comes here expecting to find divided worlds fighting each other, they will be disappointed, said Council President Subin Kim. It will find something that has never existed before in galactic history, a truly united civilization. The new galactic order was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. More importantly, it was ready to show the universe that there was a better way to organize interstellar society than through conquest and domination. Humanity had not just won a war. They had changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization itself. The age of empires was ending, and the age of cooperation had begun. But as the Council prepared for the future, everyone knew that their greatest test was still coming. The hegemony of worlds was out there, moving steadily toward their part of the galaxy. Soon they would discover whether the new galactic civilization was strong enough to defend the freedoms it had won. The answer would determine the future of the galaxy for thousands of years to come. Admiral Hyunsu Park stood on the bridge of the cooperative defense ship New Hope and watched the edge of known space through the viewing screen. 3 years had passed since the Valkyrie invasion of Earth had begun. The galaxy was now a completely different place than it had been before humans learned to fight back. But the sensors were showing something that made everyone nervous. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive fleet movements beyond the galactic rim, signs of a military force so large that it made the old Valkyrie Empire look like a small patrol group. Latest report from the long-range scouts, Communications Officer Johan Kim announced. The hegemony of worlds has over 10,000 warships moving toward our sector. They will reach the edge of cooperative space in approximately 6 months. Hyunsu nodded calmly. The Galactic Cooperative had been preparing for this moment since the day the Valkyrie Empire fell. Intelligence reports had made it clear that the hegemony was different from any enemy they had faced before, where the Valkyrie had been conquerors who enslaved the worlds they captured. The hegemony was something far worse. They were destroyers who consumed entire star systems and converted everything into resources for further expansion. Planets, populations, even stars themselves were stripped apart to feed the hegemony's endless growth. Strategic. Analyst Soyeon Nam presented her assessment to the Cooperative Defense Council. Representatives from over 300 worlds listened as she explained what they were facing. The hegemony operates on a scale we have never encountered, she said, displaying images captured by long-range probes. They do not just conquer worlds, they disassemble them completely. They take apart planets piece by piece and use the materials to build more ships and weapons. The images were terrifying. Where thriving star systems had once existed, there was nothing but empty space and artificial structures that stretched for millions of kilometers. The hegemony did not leave behind conquered worlds. They left behind industrial complexes that produced more weapons for further expansion. How many star systems have they consumed? Asked Representative Thanek, a former Valkyrie world that was now part of the cooperative. Over 3,000 confirmed, Soyeon replied. They have been expanding steadily for 10,000 years. Our intelligence suggests they have consumed the equivalent of 5 entire galactic arms. But humanity had learned from their experience with the Valkyrie. They were not waiting for the invasion to begin. Director Chan Woo Lee oversaw Project Seedling, the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history. Human volunteers were traveling to uninhabited worlds throughout the galaxy, establishing hidden colonies that would preserve galactic civilization if the worst happened. Status report on the seed colonies, he asked his assistant, So Yan-yoon. 137 colonies established and operational, she replied. Each one is completely self-sufficient and hidden from detection. If the hegemony destroys our current worlds, the seeds will ensure that our civilization survives. But the seed colonies were more than just survival shelters. Each one was a complete repository of knowledge from all the species in the Galactic Cooperative. Art, science, history, philosophy, and technology from hundreds of different worlds were being preserved in locations that no invader could find. More importantly, each seed colony was connected to all the others through a communication network that used quantum entanglement technology. For the first time in galactic history, it would be impossible to completely destroy a civilization because that civilization existed in hundreds of different locations. Simultaneously, the military preparations were equally impressive. The former Valkyrie military forces had joined with human defense fleets to create the first truly integrated multi-species army in galactic history. Commander Thax, the former Valkyrie general, who had become one of humanity's most trusted allies, worked with Colonel Young-ho Kim to train soldiers from dozens of different species to fight together as a single force. The key is not to fight like humans or like Valkyrie or like any single species, Thax explained to a group of mixed species officers. The key is to fight like a galactic civilization that represents the best of all our species combined. Results were remarkable. Valkyrie tactical knowledge combined with human innovation, supported by the unique abilities of dozens of other species, had created military units that were more effective than anything any single species could have. produced, but the most important development was technological. Scientist He Yunan had led the team that developed faster-than-light communication networks that could not be disrupted by conventional warfare. The hegemony wins by isolating star systems and destroying them one at a time. She explained to the Cooperative Science Council, "Our new communication network means that every world in the cooperative can coordinate with every other world instantly, no matter how far apart they are." The implications were staggering. For the first time, a galactic civilization could maintain coordination and unity even under massive attack. The hegemony's strategy of dividing and conquering would not work against an enemy that could never be truly divided. The breakthrough came when the first hegemony scout ships arrived at the edge of cooperative space. Long-range sensors detected 12 massive vessels, each one larger than anything the Valkyrie had ever built. They moved slowly but deliberately toward the nearest inhabited system. But instead of panicking, the Galactic Cooperative responded with something the hegemony had never encountered before: coordinated welcome. Every ship in the cooperative fleet moved to intercept the scouts, but not to attack them. Instead, they formed a defensive formation around the scout ships and began broadcasting on all frequencies. Canadian diplomat Min-Ho Choi delivered the message that would define the next phase of galactic history: hegemony vessels. "This is the Galactic Cooperative Defense Fleet. We know who you are and what you have done to other civilizations. We want you to know that things are going to be different this time." The message was accompanied by complete intelligence files on hegemony, operations throughout the galaxy, every star system they had destroyed, every population they had consumed, every world they had strip-mined for resources. The cooperative had been watching and recording their actions for years. "We offer you a choice," the message continued. "You can continue your expansion and face a galactic civilization that is united, prepared, and determined to stop you. Or you can learn what we learned from the Valkyrie, that cooperation produces better results than consumption." The hegemony scouts transmitted the message back to their fleet commanders, along with detailed sensor readings of cooperative technology and defensive preparations. For the first time in their 10,000-year history, the hegemony was facing an enemy that was not afraid of them. The response came within hours, instead of the usual demand for immediate surrender. The hegemony sent a simple question: "How is this possible?" The question revealed everything the cooperative needed to know about their enemy. The hegemony was not just a military force, it was a civilization that had forgotten that any other way of life was possible. They had consumed so many worlds for so long that they could not imagine how different species could work together, instead of destroying each other. "That is what we are going to teach you," Min-Ho replied, "if you are willing to learn." As the hegemony main fleet approached cooperative space, something unprecedented happened. Instead of massing for a desperate last battle, the hundreds of worlds in the Galactic Cooperative began working together on the largest diplomatic and cultural exchange program in galactic history. The hegemony wanted to understand how cooperation was possible. The cooperative would show them by example. Every world would contribute something to demonstrate that diversity made civilization stronger, not weaker, Captain. Sung Man-yoon, now serving as humanity's chief strategic advisor, addressed a gathering of young officers from dozens of different species as they prepared for the challenges ahead. "They think they are coming to conquer us," he said with a smile. "They have no idea that we are going to teach them how to be free." The officers represented the future of galactic civilization. Young people who had grown up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where different species worked together as equals, where the idea of consuming entire worlds for resources seemed as strange as any ancient superstition. "What if they refuse to learn?" asked a young Valkyrie officer. "Then we will stop them," Sungmin replied. "But we will stop them in a way that shows them there is a better path. We will fight if we must, but we will fight to protect what we have built, not to destroy what they have built." The final preparations were complete. The Galactic Cooperative was ready to face the hegemony of worlds, but this would not be a traditional war between competing empires. This would be a conflict between two completely different ideas about how galactic civilization should work. On one side was the hegemony, representing 10,000 years of expansion through consumption and destruction. On the other side was the cooperative, representing a new way of organizing galactic society based on mutual benefit and shared growth. The outcome would determine whether the galaxy became a graveyard of consumed worlds or the foundation for a truly cooperative galactic civilization that could last for millions of years as the Hegem